What's up, everybody? Hope you all had a great weekend. There is a lot of drama to get into on this Monday edition of Morning Cup of Hockey, presented by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So use our code NATION, NATION, in all caps. There's drama surrounding a lot of teams in the NHL. There's drama surrounding the hosts on this show. And I will let Colby dive into that right off the top here. Colby, if you want to get things going.
It's your drama, not my drama.
It's my drama.
You're the one who,
I've never blocked anyone
resorted to acting like a 5-year-old this weekend. I didn't even know that you blocked me. That I think that's probably my favorite part. But you're just, listen, if you're going to tweet stupid shit.
Like what?
You're going to get sarcastic responses.
Like
okay?
what?
Like when the Rangers score a goal and you make it seem like they just,
17 seconds in the fourth line starts.
17 puck pass play and somebody went through their legs and pulled a
where
Michigan.
did I do that?
Like, you just wow. Okay, the Rangers scored a few seconds into the game. What did they do the rest of the game? Like, wow. It's just like you're on Twitter just begging for attention, and so you're getting attention, and then you're so soft. Okay, you're like Pettersson out in Vancouver. You just can't take the heat, and you put your tail between your legs, and you blocked me. Which again,
Vic, do we have any more?
Known if you guys didn't tell me that you blocked me.
Vic, do we have any more of the tweets that we could show? Because I don't think how that's
how about your other
attention. When I'm covering the game saying, wow, 17 seconds in, the Rangers' fourth line scored a goal, that I was shocked. That was my reaction. Wow.
So wow. The thing is with you is you use these words and these terms so freely that when you actually need them to mean something, they don't mean anything because you just throw them throw them around. And this was my favorite, actually, how good the kill was where they gave up a goal. It's like, how is it a solid kill if they got scored on?
They killed off 3 minutes and 58 seconds of a double minor, and then in the last dying second of the penalty kill, Carolina scored.
Okay, so they gave up.
The team plays a really strong 58 minutes of hockey and loses in the last minute of the game. It's a bad game because they lost in the last 2 minutes.
But we're not talking about apples to apples. You're telling everyone that it was a solid kill. Yet they gave up a goal, so it wasn't a kill. They didn't kill it off.
There was 2 seconds left.
It doesn't matter. They didn't kill it off.
This is just stupid, honestly. This is stupid.
How is it stupid? Like I'm just wondering, like, what are you selling to the Rangers?
They did good things until they didn't.
Why are you lying to the fan base? It's not a solid kill if you give up a goal.
This is like so beyond stupid, and we're just like filling airspace right now. Okay. This is the dumbest thing, and this is why I blocked you, because you're just fucking annoying.
You wanted to talk about it. You're just selling lies to people. You're just part of the fake news media, I guess. That's how you want to be.
What do you think about that, though? Actually, okay, sure. This is just a stupid thing, but what do you think about that comment about is this better? The double minor bleeding rule is stupid. What do you think about that? If there's blood, it's 4. If there's not blood, it's 2. Like I kind of agree. It is stupid.
Yeah,
because sometimes a guy gets hit bad and there's no blood, but it should be a 4.
Yeah, but they could still call it 4. It doesn't have to be blood for them to call it 4. Yeah, they can. We learned that last year in the playoffs. That was it. I don't know if it was the playoffs at the end of the regular season, but you can call a 4-minute penalty without blood. It's at the discretion.
I don't know if I've seen that.
Again, unless you have somebody who's reviewing these, upstairs. Then it's a judgment call. People are going to be angry. Like but you can, just for the record, you can call a double minor without blood. You can. It doesn't ever really happen.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that ever.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does happen. So, so let's talk Rempe here, because I know, you want to, what do you think? Like, you're going to sit here. Go ahead. You can take the floor.
No, before we talk about Rempe, I just want to talk about our sponsor, Proraso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care, made in Italy since 1948. Proraso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Proraso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps. Hockey 15. And let me ask you a question. Did you watch the Rangers versus Stars game on Friday night? Did you
I
see
watched
any of it?
No, the next day I watched the condensed version.
Oh, you
on
watched the
NHL.
condensed version. So you can
Yep.
form an opinion on how Matt Rempe played from the condensed version?
I don't actually need to watch a game to know that a guy who played 5 minutes and 32 seconds and took a 5-minute major, okay, and the goalie had to stand on his head all game to tell me that he is a positive impact on a hockey game. Whether he drew 9 power plays for his team or not.
Okay, so again,
5 minutes and 32 seconds. He put his team shorthanded for 1/4 of a period, 5 minutes. He then made it so your best friend, Alexis Lafreniere, couldn't go on the ice for 5 whole minutes because he doesn't kill penalties.
Mhm.
Think of all the guys that don't kill penalties.
I'm aware.
Sit on the bench for 5 straight minutes, okay? So anybody sitting here telling me how well he did, I'm sorry. 5 minutes and 32 seconds of ice with another 5-minute major and now an 8-game suspension and more drama surrounding their hockey team does not belong in the National Hockey League. Does not belong. He has turned himself into a clown show and a circus the way that he has played. And he's now been given what happened last time he got called up? What did he do?
He didn't get suspended.
Didn't he take a really
on Holloway or something, right?
Really stupid penalty that cost his team? Penalty. If you're Peter Laviolette or Chris Drury, can you really bring this guy up into the NHL with the circus now that he do you want that? If you're the head coach, do you want to deal with that?
No, but I'm telling you, watching that game, like that was a Ranger team that felt different than the previous month. Like, yes, he took a bad penalty and now he has to sit for it. He's sitting 8 games. But the energy that he provided for the team, and again, I'm not saying Matt Rempe is an NHL player. He doesn't have the skills of an NHL player, but that doesn't mean he can't be impactful in an NHL game, which I think he is. I do. Mm-hmm. He brings a different life form out of this team. And if you watched that game, it was evident until this stupid hit. Like, this is an avoidable hit. He doesn't even have to go and play the body there. I think that's actually taking himself out of position by finishing that hit when the puck's going the other way. But Matt Rempe in this game, I'm telling you, if you watched it, his presence was everywhere in that 5 minutes. It was. He was more relevant in that 5 minutes, 32 seconds in that game than Capo Caco was at home against the LA Kings 2 weeks ago. He was.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not exactly it's a pretty low bar. I mean, like, that's a pretty low bar.
Yeah.
So you're not really doing him a lot of justice with that low of a bar.
But to your point before about putting his team down shorthanded and the three penalties that he drew, I saw a comment in the chat saying, well, technically he gave his team more power play minutes than he gave them PK minutes, and they couldn't do anything with it. The power play can't score. Power play's been terrible over the last 15 games, and Laviolette won't change it.
So from a team standpoint, you have a bad power play.
Oh, okay? You're saying he's making it worse by putting them on the power play?
No, absolutely not. You're always taking a power play, whether your power play stinks or not. Yeah. And I do think that is the one area of the Rangers game that they could actually get themselves out of a hole is the power play. The rest of their game is atrocious right now. The lifelessness in the way that they play, although they started, obviously they scored that goal. And then I thought that they played pretty well after the goal for a little bit and they weren't able to sustain it. But I don't know, man. Like, I just have an issue with a guy who then puts you down to 11 forwards, okay, which means one other guy fights. Let's say you're down to 11 forwards and there's a fight. Then you're down to 10 forwards. Like, you're hurting your team more than you're helping your team with the 5-minute major. And there's no other way around that. There's no other way around that. The amount of chaos that causes within your bench with guys sitting there, not getting their normal reps, not getting their normal shifts in the game. I mean, it's just, it's again, I get it. Drew 3 penalties. That's a fact. You cannot deny the fact in that he drew 3 penalties. Yeah. But if you're sitting here telling me that in 5 minutes of ice, 32 minutes of ice, he turns around and takes that hit, which again, you like, do you see his arm and his elbow? Like, he just can't control himself. It's moronic. He's proving to everybody that I am not good enough to be in this league. And I said it to you last year during the playoffs, before the playoffs. I said he's not going to play in the playoffs. And then I said to you, he's going to be in the American League more than he's going to be in the NHL. He's played, 22 games? And he's now going to be suspended for 12 games, more than half the amount of games he's played in the NHL. Not much more, but more. The circus is done with this kid. And he just cost himself $80,000 in fine money. His cap hit every day. I looked it up. He makes like $4,200 a day. So 8 games, roughly 20 days. That's about $85,000. He's going to end up owing the NHL more money than he makes because of how stupid and how out of control he is as a hockey player. And look, I'm all for clean hits. I'm usually the one on this show defending hits when everybody in the chat, he left his feet, he did this, he did that. And I'm usually the one defending it, saying, you got to keep your head up. You got to protect yourself. You can't go through the middle. But that type of defenseless shit is not something I'm ever getting on board with, ever. And again, he just continues to prove why he belongs in what players refer to as the jungle, which is the American Hockey League.
But let me ask you this too, because, he had been sent down to the AHL and had been playing power play, 6-on-5, penalty kill, getting every situation. And we've talked about development on this show a lot. And if they're going to play him in those positions in the AHL, to call him up to the NHL and give him 5 minutes, what's the point of putting him in those spots down there if he's never going to be in those spots up in the NHL? It should be apples to apples. When you're developing a player to play a certain position in the AHL, that should be the exact role that they're playing when they get called up, so they don't have to adjust in a certain way. I think a part of this is that he feels like he has to make an even bigger impact on the game because he gets such little ice time every time he's up here.
Well, I actually, there's part of what you say, I will agree with you. Yeah. I do think in most situations, that's why a lot of times a player will get sent down to the American League who's in and out of the NHL, who is not going to be a power play player in the NHL, but they're a power play player in the AHL. And then when they go back, they don't find themselves on the power play. They're killing penalties. But in this scenario, you have a guy who can't really he can't really play much. His puck skills, his ability to make reads,
if you watch that game, he was doing all that. He got himself on a breakaway. He was making hockey plays
in 5 minutes of ice time. So if the problem for him is that he can't do all those things consistently without doing other stupid things, I get why they're trying to put him in situations where he has to touch the puck more and he has to make reads and he has to get his feet up the ice to make plays. Look, we've seen it at times sprinkled in, but ultimately, you cannot tell me this guy's a National Hockey League player without being a complete Rangers homer. I'm sorry.
It's also, now what? I didn't say he was a National Hockey League player.
Now what? You've got almost $1 million in dead cap money, which doesn't really matter now that they traded Jacob Trouba, but a guy who's now just going to sit suspended and cost you $820,000 against your cap and can't play for the next 8 games. You've got a roster freeze. Okay. So it's not like you can really do anything. Can't call anybody up right now. Obviously they have enough guys, but it's just, sorry, man. The league's now on notice too, because the next time he does this, it'll be 20 games. The next time he does something stupid, he will get 20 games. No doubt.
And I see Brendan Matheson in our chat talking about the Canucks. We're getting to that later in the show. We have Irfaan Gaffar coming, who does a great job covering the Vancouver Canucks. So I see your comments. We're starting with this because this is how shows work. We go from topic to topic. So we'll get into the Canucks in a bit. We just thought this Matt Rempe 8-game suspension is pretty big news as well, because let's face it also, Matt Rempe, whether you root for the Rangers or don't, everyone talks about him because we've never seen anything like this. He is a polarizing figure now in the NHL, and he's 22 years old and has only played 22 games. I've never seen anything like this in all of sports. He's going to be a talking point on every show today across mainstream media, podcasts. He'll be everything. Sarah Palin is talking about Matt Rempe. I mean, this guy is, I don't want to say growing the popularity of the sport, but everyone around hockey and people who don't even watch hockey talk about Matt Rempe.
I certainly didn't have Sarah Palin on my bingo card. What is tiddlywinks? I have no idea. What does that mean? Does anybody know what that means? I had to click it to make sure it was actually Sarah Palin. I had to click that, and so obviously it was. And I don't know, maybe someone in our chat can help us and tell us what she means by tiddlywinks. A little bit ridiculous. So
I know who Sarah Palin is, MYR Marine. And if I needed any proof, she was John McCain's running mate for the 2008 election.
She has made some of the most bonehead comments of all time leading up to a presidential race. And I'm reading in the chat from New York Marine that Ron Duguay is dating her, and now that makes sense. I had no idea that Sarah Palin and Ron Duguay were an item.
Jay Thielen, Tiddlywinks is a 70s era board game.
Okay, so there you go. See, I'm glad somebody explained it to us, because I thought that it had some other sort of meaning, but I really just wasn't sure.
Yeah, and listen here, I want to address this chat too. Paul Pass, he's arrogant. After the dirty hit, he throws his hands to his ear. Come on, not cool. Players will begin to lose any respect for him. Like I keep trying to think of other athletes and compare to Rempe, trying to think of like popularity wise and talking points and whatnot. And I don't think this is like a fair comparison, because this guy's, champion and has been in the league for a long time, but like
all-star Olymp, like he's like
Who?
played in the Olympics. Like,
Who?
I know you're gonna say Draymond Green, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for.
But like you can't compare a guy who's
and I was saying that.
Okay.
But Draymond Green has like kicked guys in the nuts. Like he's like the league, the NBA fans he's like the villain,
Right.
He
I know, but being a villain when you're like a superstar versus being a villain when you play 5 minutes a night.
And that's the that's the hard part. Like that's why I think the Tom Wilson Rempe comparisons aren't fair either, because Tom Wilson is actually a really good hockey player.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me ask you one question, and we'll put a bow on this.
Yeah.
Do you think we will see him in the NHL playing again this season? And furthermore, in the chat, do you guys think in the chat that he will play in the NHL this year? Give us a yes.
I think he will, because I think Laviolette does really like him. I think he will.
You think he's okay with the circus that he brings?
I just think. Listen, I think Laviolette. I think Laviolette likes what he brings, and will take the bad with the good. I truly think that.
Okay, that's totally fair. And I'm not really sure. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I would just say this: if I was running a team, especially a team in a massive city, whether it was New York, whether it was Toronto, really any Canadian city, because they're as we've seen with this whole Vancouver thing. Or anything Edmonton does, whatever, Toronto. I wouldn't be able to bring a guy up who has this negative of an impact, or when you're like, to me, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like, if he's not playing, everybody's whining about it. If he is playing, everybody's whining about it. When he does play, it's this. And it's just hard for me to, if I'm running the team, to want to deal with that type of situation and manage the circus that comes with it. So, all right, we'll see what happens. He's going to sit for 8 games. This will all cool down, and then we'll see if he goes back to the American League or if he sticks around the NHL. So I know the plan is to get into the Pettersson. I call him Petey. So now I'm but I do want to quickly make a comment about a team that we didn't have in the power rankings this past week. And I'm pretty sure when we did it last week, and I'm pretty sure I said this when we did our power rankings, and I was like, the Edmonton Oilers will be in the next power ranking.
Well, we had Tyler on too to talk about it.
And I was like, the next power rankings, I was pretty sure the Edmonton Oilers would find their way into it. I also will say it's been a kiss of death. Every team, I feel like I was like Minnesota Wild, #1 power rankings. Look how they've done since.
Yeah.
It It happened when I put Colorado in the power rankings like a month ago too. They crept their way up on like an 8-game winning streak or whatever. They were 7-1, and then they like completely flatlined, which is kind of like what Minnesota did. And I know you called out Chris Kelleher a little bit on that. And he
but
actually
they lost Philip Gustafson too. Like they've had some,
he didn't push back, and they've struggled. But I don't know if you caught any of the game last night, the Edmonton Ottawa game. And I mean, they are, and I said this, I don't know if I said it on our show, and I think I said it on DFO Live, like when the question, the poll question was, do you think these two teams could get back to the NHL? Yeah. I mean, to the Stanley Cup? And I would say, I said no Florida, yes Edmonton.
I was the opposite.
Because I think Florida's probably kind of on their, is going to hit a wall, in my opinion, the way that they play. And I think Edmonton will improve with their back end. And, there's too much with McDavid and Draisaitl. And what they've won, 11 of their last 13 games or something like that. Yeah. Darnell Nurse is playing as well as, we've seen him play in a while. And Bouchard's not even playing consistently, and they're still winning games, and they're still getting
Bouchard turnover last night was pretty bad.
That's what I'm saying. He's not playing well consistently. I mean, he's had these nights where it's just, J-Rock, the Blues are not in my power rankings right now. No, to answer your comments. So,
and Hyman has 10 goals in his last 9.
Yeah, I mean, he's up to 13 goals. So he's probably back, probably at 30 goals by all said and done this year. Again, he's probably another guy that once that Team Canada roster thing settled, he looks like he's just playing. He's got 6 goals in his last 6 games, goals in his last 6 games.
Yeah, a goal in each of the last 6.
I don't know if he had 2 and 1. So, Edmonton is starting to look scary, and their second pair has Troy Stetcher, third pair has Ty Emberson. Like, there's still holes on the back end that they seem to be working through because, again, like, they only gave up 1 last night against Ottawa. I mean, Ottawa's been one of the hottest teams as of late. Ullmark has been on another level.
Mm-hmm. I just think, but Ullmark got hurt last night, did he not?
He
upper
did,
body injury,
but we don't have clarity on
how long he'll be out.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I know our buddy Shane Pinto is on Chicklets today. I'm going to listen to that as soon as we're done with this show. I can't wait to hear Shane on Chicklets. He's probably hilarious on that show.
Why don't we get him back on our show now that he's back in the regular swing of things? Why don't you see if you can pull that off?
I was going to text him to try to come on tomorrow. I'll ask him if he's down. Obviously it's tough with tomorrow being Christmas Eve. I don't know if guys want to do media stuff, but I'll shoot him a text after the show and see if he's down for it.
Yeah, he is your buddy, so you might be able to get him to come on, and we'll try to get back to our Saravalli Tuesday situation with him. And then just to throw this in there before we move on to this whole Vancouver Canucks situation, we did pre-tape an episode last night with James Van Riemsdyk. So we're going to put that out on the 26th. We are pre-taping a Christmas special today with actually Tyler and Frank. So we're going to do a little combination show of DFO Live, Morning Cup of Hockey, Christmas edition that we will release on Christmas morning for those of you who want to get a little hockey content in. So we'll be live Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday and Thursday this week, we will make sure that we are still releasing shows. They won't be live, but there will be something there for you guys to listen to. So with that, make sure you subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel, and make sure you like our episode because you guys have been great about that lately. I'm pretty sure our subscriber count just went up to 20,000 last week. So, that's a pretty steady climb. I think when we joined on last year, it was about 10,000 subscribers. So in a little less than a year, we've doubled from 10,000 to 20,000, which is great progress. So couldn't do all that stuff without you guys. And don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and help us keep growing.
Yes, and before we move into our Vancouver conversation, just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important, and they'll treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle. If you need new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle, stop into Fountain Tire and they'll sort you out. Check out Fountain Tire or make an appointment by going to fountaintire.com. And Colby, let's just tee up these clips with Vic. We'll play the JT Miller first and then Elias Pettersson second. Just for people who haven't been informed on what's going on with Vancouver, there was a lot of drama over the weekend, but it's been going on for what sounds like a couple years. I don't know all the details about it. Colby, I'm not sure if you know the details about it. We'll talk about that on the other side of these clips. So, Vic, if you can queue up JT Miller and then Elias Pettersson.
Listen, you guys, in a sense, of the outer world have created this thing. Like, this isn't a thing. So, am I bothered? No, but you guys are just wasting your time.
How tired are you about hearing of it?
I don't care. You guys want to talk about it? You want to ask me all you want. I can bring up PD and we can do the interview together if that would make you guys happy.
I don't know why people still try and make shit up. Excuse my language, but yeah, that's my response to it.
So it hasn't been distracting you?
Oh my God. Next question.
So clearly they're pretty fed up with all these questions. And listen, I don't think the media just makes things up, but they probably make things a little bit more of a bigger deal than they might be. Colby, what do you know or think or have a feel on for this situation right now?
Look, I've heard from pretty credible people that it's not made up.
I've heard it's also not made up. I heard it goes back a couple years. So when
and that was what I was going to say next. I have a friend in that locker room. It's funny. I said something when I was working in Chicago a couple of years ago on the Blackhawk podcast. I made a comment about it, or maybe it was on DFO Live filling in, and it picked up a little bit of steam in Vancouver. So I could just tell you this: it's not clearly made up, Jeremiah. There's beef, like there's no doubt. Now, is it being exaggerated? Yeah, it's going to be exaggerated because Elias Pettersson makes $11.8 million or something like that, $6 million, and is, invisible half the time. Like he comes in and out and is, not consistent in the way that he plays. And we know what he did in the playoffs last year. It just completely vanished, right? So yes, people are going to ask questions. Are you not playing well because of this situation with you and JT Miller? Go ahead.
I was saying, let's bring Irf in because Irf is here. And I did actually see Irf tweet the other day that when JT Miller came back, it's been 6 games, and I don't think Elias Pettersson has a point in those 6 games. Is that right, Irf?
Yep.
So clearly, I don't know if that's like a total coincidence or it's causation or whatever, but you know it better than us, Irf. This is obviously a real thing that's going on.
Well, that's the thing is you have all these people, even in our chat right now, Irf, that are like, this is clearly made up. It's not made up. It's not made up. Maybe exaggerated, maybe being blown out of proportion, but it's not made up.
It's 100% not made up, especially when the morning before the game, the head coach talked about it and addressed it and said, you're going to basically, have people don't get along. They're not going to sit and play PlayStation together. And then the captain, Quinn Hughes, talked so eloquently for about a minute and about a minute and a half, and was basically saying, that there was some stuff going on. And it's not like everyone's going to like each other, but it's his job as a leader of this team to try and make the team come together, basically paraphrasing. So look, they all know there's something going on there. It's been like this for quite some time. Bruce Boudreau, like you just mentioned, Johnny said it. And when he was here a couple of years ago, I just think it's two people that look at the game, maybe look at life, maybe look at things in complete different directions and completely different ways. Now, look, I'm sure that you guys have both played and been a part of teams where guys just absolutely don't like each other, and you can have success. The problem is where these guys it just looks like you can't have success. JT has 1 goal in his last 15 games that he's played. Obviously, he missed some time with, his personal reasons. Elias Pettersson, 2 goals in his last 15 games, 0 since JT Miller's been back. But even beyond those 2 guys, Connor Garland hasn't been good, 0 goals in 11 games. Jake DeBrusk has been okay. The only one really doing anything every single night is Quinn Hughes.
Yeah.
right? And no disrespect to Pia Suter, no disrespect to Kiefer Sherwood. They can't be your best players every single night. This is taking a toll on the coaching staff. This is taking a toll on management. This is taking a toll on guys in the locker room. I can say that.
But why was it not a thing last year? Because the team was just having success? Like, I don't remember hearing about this once last year.
Yeah, because the team was operating at an absolute nuclear level.
Well, what's changed?
They're not playing well. The team is not playing well. There's injuries to key players. The team's not playing well. They're not having this success. The team was the season started with a black cloud over them with no goalie.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're so lucky that you got Kevin Lankin in, because if you didn't, where would you be as a team right now? Like the expectation was so high for this team, and they went into the offseason and they tried to take care of some needs. You know, you lose Elias Lindholm, you lose Nikita Zadorov. You want to be this team that's this fast puck moving team that's, you know, able to generate from the rush, but then you sign Derek Forbort and Vinny Desharnais. I'm sorry, that just doesn't fix what you need. You need a top four defenseman. You need some more depth. They went and got Elias Pettersson, a winger. They actually got him too. Daniel Sprong obviously didn't work out here, and then they traded him. But yeah, it's just there's just clearly something going on that Rick Tocchet's going to need to figure out.
So let me ask you one question before Colby chimes in here. I just want to get this off the top of my head because it's fresh there. Does this date back a little bit to, because I don't know if there was, listen, I'm not in the Vancouver Canucks mix or discourse ever, but Bo Horvat was traded like 2 years ago midseason, was the captain of that team. Was he like holding that relationship down? Like, was there something about Bo, like, what was the narrative around him being traded midseason and the drama surrounding that? Like, does that get involved in this at all?
You had to make a choice of Bo or JT Miller. And the choice that management made was they were going to extend JT Miller because they felt that that was a guy that could lead you in a direction of where you wanted to go with the team. And having a guy like JT Miller, the way he plays the game, you know, wears his heart on his sleeve, you know, and sometimes maybe a little bit too much, as we've seen. But that was the choice that they made there. And they had a great 1C there, or quote unquote 1 and 1A with him and Elias Pettersson. Elias Pettersson, let me put this out there, is an absolute hell of a hockey player. He is a superstar when he wants to be in the National Hockey League.
He wants to be.
And right now, it's so tough because the guy doesn't shoot the puck. He doesn't look dangerous with the puck. And this is going back to maybe the end of February after the All-Star game last year. He wasn't good leading up to the playoffs. And in the playoffs, like you mentioned, Colby, he was absolutely invisible. So, yes, there's definitely some stuff going on there, and they need to figure it out quicker than later. Like, Quinn Hughes has had talks with these two guys. He sat them down. Like, this isn't a secret. And when you hear people talk about it from different social circles, whether it's, you just mentioned like the Vancouver discourse, or whether it's on the East Coast, or whether it's somewhere else, or people over in Sweden talking about Elias Pettersson, there is something definitely going on here. And the two players just didn't admit it. They said they're making it up. And that's just the way they went about it.
And look, like you said, you do have to find a way, though. Like that, This is where I'm going to draw a line with these two. Is like you're the two best forwards on this team. One's the heart and soul, and the other's one of the most skilled players in the entire world. Right? Find a way for the betterment of the team. Like I'm actually going to put it more on JT Miller because he's the captain.
He's not the captain.
Well, he
Quinn Hughes
wears a letter. Sorry. He does he not wear a letter? Is he not an assistant?
They both
captain?
do. They both do.
So I'm going to put it on him. He's older. He's been around longer. And I actually know JT a little bit back from when he was in Hartford, actually, in the American Hockey League in the early days. And so he's got a hard-nosed personality. Like, he's old school. He wants to, you know, especially when he was young, party hard, play hard, train hard, like all of those things. So you have to realize something. Not everybody is like that. Some guys need to be told good job. Some guys need to have their hands held. Like, you can't have this one size fits all old school approach. So I think JT Miller is actually probably the one who can make this go away and make this better. Because I don't think Pettersson, I don't think Pettersson can fix it. Pettersson is what he is, and he's going to be what he is. Like, I think JT Miller's actually probably got to be the guy to fix it. Although, if you're asking me in this argument who to choose sides, like who to side with, I'd side with JT Miller. So, even though I reckon I side with him, I still recognize the other way. And I think JT Miller has to recognize that.
It's interesting you say that. I just did an interview with Travis Green for Down to Earth. It's going to come out later this month. And he said the way that he had to change his coaching and the way that he was coached in a player were two completely different things. There are guys that you can talk to a certain way, and there are guys that you can't absolutely talk to a certain way. And that's no problem with the player or the person. That's just the way it is. Like the NHL did that great commercial with Gen Z and all of that. Yeah. But there are personalities, there are egos, there are so many other things that you have to take into consideration when you look at stories, not just with these two players, but around players in the National Hockey League. Like you look at a guy, like I'll just use him for an example, Claude Giroux. You can probably say whatever you want to Claude Giroux because he's been around. He's played 100%. The game for a long time. You can't say what you want to Tim Stützle. JT Miller can take criticism absolutely like the best of them because he's the one that's going to dish it out. Maybe Elias Pettersson isn't one like that, or he has to be talked to a different way. And I think that that's one of the things that people need to realize here, that it's a little bit of an ego thing. It's a little bit of a shot in the arm. But the problem is that the team just looks out of sorts. Like they need to have a common goal. And right now it doesn't look like they have one.
And let me just follow up. There was a comment in the chat from our guy, Jeremiah, who is in the show every day. We love Jeremiah, but I got to say, Jeremiah, lately, I've been disagreeing with almost all of your chat takes. And I know you and Jonny had a Twitter beef last week.
We squashed it.
I know you squashed it, which is great. But no, I'm not saying JT Miller needs to take him out for beers with reporters. Forget reporters. Leave reporters out of it. You fix this on the ice, and then the reporters stop asking you the questions. But sure, does he need to take him out for beers? I don't really know whether it's lunch, whether it's beers, but like what Irv just said is the key right there. You can't talk to every player the same. JT Miller can treat, Brock Boeser one way, and he can maybe push and ride Brock Boeser one way. You can't do that to every guy. This is my first year coaching, like full-time coaching on a bench, junior hockey players. So we're talking 20, 19, 18, and a couple 17-year-old kids. Like that was the hardest thing in the beginning for me, was realizing what I could say to who and how to press certain buttons on guys in order to get the best out of them. And that's where I'm saying, even though I'd side with JT, I think he's got to be the one to fix it. And then one more comment I'll throw at you, Irf, and you can throw it back in my face and tell me I'm crazy. I remember like 2 years ago when I was in Chicago, we had just traded for the Blackhawks had just traded for Jason Dickinson, for Dickinson right out of that locker room. And he's a quiet guy. He never would have said any of these things. And I made a comment about how on I think Frank's show, about how I had heard from, boots on the ground in that locker room that guys were upset about the marketing department using certain guys for Twitter and for promos and this and that. Like, that's how fractured it was. This was pre-Rick Tocchet. And you've been in this market and covering this team for not overnight. You've been there, right? So does this go back pretty far? And has there been a lot of rockiness and friction in that room for quite some time?
Yeah, I do. And I think last year helped a lot with it because they had success. Everyone had career years, it looked like, right? And they were the team to beat. But right now, you're not having success. It's clear there's an issue there. It comes out and it just looks bad on the ice. I think that's the biggest thing. At the end of the day, Rick can coach his team. Patrick Allvin can put this team together, but it's up to the guys on the ice to go out and produce. Their star players aren't producing. And also, like, the two players that talked about it, they knew that was coming. Like, I have no problem with the reporters asking JT Miller or Elias Pettersson about it, because the morning before the game, the head coach and the captain of the team, Quinn Hughes, addressed it. So you knew it was coming. And Elias Pettersson gave the answer like he did and kind of walked out of the scrum at the end of it. And JT kind of washed it off a little bit as well, because obviously they're pissed. They don't want to hear about it. It's clearly gotten to a boiling point. I don't think that they need to go out for beers. I don't think that they need to do any of that with reporters or whatever. I mean, though I'm sure some of the reporters would probably love that, but that's neither here nor there.
I was there.
No, absolutely not in this city, Johnny. I'll tell you that. But no, I just think that there was a point in this season where they were talked to. They've addressed it and they've tried, and just things just still haven't gotten better. And like you said, it's been something that's been ongoing.
Yeah, but here's the other thing too that I want to bring up, that this is so not it's not an uncommon thing for guys on a team.
No.
Like I'll talk about like my second year junior, our leading scorer and our starting goaltender fought multiple times in practice that year.
I love that.
We went to the finals. Like we were undefeated in playoffs until the championship game, literally 8-0 till the Robertson Cup final. We lost in the final, but like our leading scorer and our starting goalie would bash heads almost every day. But they put it behind them off the ice. You know what I mean? Like that's just something that winning teams do. And I guess that's why they had success last year. But my question is the media now making this something bigger than it is, because it is common for teammates to bash heads from time to time?
I think the media has a job to do. I do. I think that sometimes storylines do get blown out of proportion, and we've all been guilty of it. I think that's why we're sitting here and talking about this. But we wouldn't be sitting here and talking about this if they had success on the ice. If Elias Pettersson wasn't pointless in the 6 games since JT Miller returned. If JT Miller didn't have 1 goal in the last 15 games that he played. If, other players and everyone was going in the same direction, right?
Yeah.
Rick Tocchet didn't do himself any
games. Like,
but Rick Tocchet didn't do himself favors by not putting them on the same power play. They alternated power plays. Like in that Utah game, they're up 2-0 with a power play for a chance to go up 3-0. And they put out a power play that doesn't involve Elias Pettersson. Those 5 players that were on the ice, those aren't your 5 best players. Mm-hmm. Elias Pettersson is included in your 5 best players. And in the power, and in the game the next night against the Vegas Golden Knights, they have a power play. JT Miller is not on the top unit. Those aren't your 5 best players if you're Rick Tocchet. So yes, I understand that he wanted different looks. Yes, I understand that there's certain ways and certain things you have to look at it. But the reason why this is getting to the point of where it's gotten is because there's so many people that are talking about it that it had to be addressed.
Well, I feel like this weekend it really just became a huge thing. Like,
it should be done now. Like they should go out tonight and absolutely smoke the San Jose Sharks, because the Sharks are an inferior opponent to them, but this is why they play the games.
But the Sharks have Macklin, so like,
and he's playing at home. It's going to be an expensive night for him.
He's going to dominate. But I have to ask this hypothetical question because it's going to be talked about all day today. And I know it. That's just how Colby, we were just talking about it before we even hopped on the show. If one of these guys has to get traded, which one do the Canucks separate from?
Oh, I thought you were going to tell him about the trade that I had to shut down on you before the show started.
No.
Okay, you're not going to go there. Good.
Well, everything in that trade lines up contractually.
Nothing in that trade lines up. There's no world where the New York Rangers are where the Vancouver Canucks are giving up JT Miller for Mika Zibanejad.
Both 31,
there's
there's
no reality where that is happening ever. So just get it out of your mind. It's not happening.
Shut up, man. Let her
go ahead. Let Irf answer your question now that the stupidity is out into the open.
I think where there's a little smoke, there may be a little bit of fire. Like I think that Elias, I think that when Elliot Friedman wondered and hypothetically in his head made up a scenario with the Buffalo Sabres, there may have been some truth to that. There may have been something going on there where the two teams had talked. Now, look, it's all semantics. They could say, Kevin Adams could have been like, hey, how's Elias Pettersson doing? That's not a trade thing or anything like that, but
that's soft tampering.
Is it?
Soft.
I don't know. Unless they talked about it, I have nothing to do with it.
I'm kidding.
No, but look, I think that when you look at it and from an outside looking in, I think that if things don't get better, they're really going to have to look at it. Elias Pettersson's no trade clause doesn't kick in until July 1st. JT Miller's got a no movement, but I mean, I'm sure if, the Canucks or any organization with any player went to someone that had a no movement clause and say, listen, this isn't going well, we got to move you for the betterment of the team. Where do you want to go? Now, whether that's Elias Pettersson, whether that's JT Miller, whether that's anyone in the National Hockey League that's got one of these, I think if the player and the organization and the agents had a conversation, like players get traded, like things have happened. I think they're going to see this one out. I really do. I don't see any movement being imminent here. They still need a top 4 defenseman. They need another winger. And they're going to go from there. It would have to be a move or a trade for either player that is absolutely too good to pass up, that would set you up for years.
Okay. So, look, before we let you go, I do want to ask you about a couple other things with the Vancouver Canucks, moving off this whole Pettersson and Miller situation. A couple of things. Thatcher Demko obviously has returned to playing.
Yeah.
Are you confident that, this is a guy that, in my opinion, like pre-injury, based on how Vancouver plays and like how they sometimes leave him out to dry, I think on any given night is the closest guy in the league to Igor Shesterkin. Just my opinion.
Really?
Pre-injury. Do you believe he gets back to the form of being a true number 1 top 5 goalie in the National Hockey League? Are we talking about him on the Olympic team next year for Team USA? Like, what do you see if you can look into your crystal ball there in Vancouver and give us your opinion?
The biggest thing you said there was pre-injury. He hasn't not been hurt for a lot of his career. He hasn't battled an injury, hasn't had a healthy season for quite some time. You look at last year during the playoffs, you look at, before this season started, I remember before training camp, people were whispering that, Thatcher Demko is not going to be ready for training camp. And then the Canucks came out and said, he might be ready for training camp. He didn't play till December. Sorry. Like the end of November, he wasn't ready. Right. So there's obviously something going on there with this injury. We know what it is. He's admitted it. It's something that surgery can't repair. It's something that he's going to have to live with. Do I think that he can get back to that form? Absolutely. I think that, he was a Vezina finalist last season for a reason. He's a hell of a goaltender. He's one of, the best goaltenders in the league when he is healthy and when he is sharp and on his game. There are more nights than not where this team didn't deserve to win hockey games, but Thatcher Demko stole them games. That's just plain and simple. And you hope for the Canucks' sake that he can get back there. It's going to be interesting. You mentioned the Olympic team and things like that. I know that he was upset because obviously he wasn't a part of the Four Nations Club, but obviously he was hurt. So I think that was something that, he's going to use his motivation a little bit to try and get better and get healthy. So you make sure he is on that Olympic team. But yeah, to answer your question, I hope he gets, better, because the Canucks are a better team when he's an all-star goaltender.
I want to ask about one guy as well, and this is probably a stupid question the way I'm going to phrase it, but
no such thing as stupid questions, Johnny. Only stupid answers.
We've seen that
over the weekend.
Yeah, you know how I work, but is Quinn Hughes, maybe outside of McDavid and McKinnon, becoming like, I wouldn't trade that guy for anybody in this league? Is that the territory that Quinn Hughes is becoming? Because I think this year, and I'm, I know both him and Kale, but Quinn Hughes to me this year, without Hronek too, these past few games, like I got to imagine he's becoming a top 6, 7, 8 player in the league.
He's got 40 points in 33 games as a defenseman. He plays 28 minutes a night. Like, the dude plays a lot of hockey.
I wouldn't put him top 5 yet, but I feel like
he's appointment viewing, right? I think that there are certain players that when they get in the puck in the National Hockey League that you, on their stick, you say, okay, what is he going to do? Something exciting is going to happen. McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, those guys are in their upper echelon of, making things happen. Quinn Hughes, probably one of the best skaters in the National Hockey League. The way
we've had Kale on the top, like Colby and I say McDavid, McKinnon, Kale sometime. I don't know if Colby.
Yeah, I think that Kale.
But I put Quinn Hughes. I put him in that 5. Like, I think McDavid, McKinnon, Makar, Hughes. Like, I put him in that top, the 1% of the 1%. Like he's there in my opinion.
How many? Okay, here's a question I look at. I'll ask you guys: how many guys in the NHL can do what Quinn Hughes does on a nightly basis? Is there 10 guys that can do
only
one
other defenseman in the NHL. There's only one other.
There's your answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's become a guy that, if you have a maybe after McDavid, like, because I think McDavid is like your number one.
He is.
You're
Undoubtedly.
redrafting and you're like building a team. After that, you got to think long and hard. Do I want Quinn? Do I want Cale? Do I want McKinnon? Do I want, like, then there's like 5 guys.
Let me ask you this. Like, I'm obviously on the West Coast. I watch Quinn and Cale a lot more. What is the talk on your guys' side of the continent about Quinn Hughes and about, his game?
I don't think people over here, for the most part, like, obviously the diehard hockey fans are staying up to watch him, but like, no one is staying up at 10:30 to midnight to watch the Vancouver Canucks play hockey right now. Last year, I'd say, people were more inclined to watch them with all the positive buzz around them, but it hasn't been the same this year. I mean, listen, guys like us, we're hockey freaks. We're going to watch no matter who's playing.
Yep.
Like, I'm watching the San Jose Sharks right now, but that's because Macklin Celebrini is must-watch TV. But that's what happens when you have stars like this on late night or NHL television. But I don't think, if I had to put a number on it, like maybe 15% of people are staying up late to watch the Canucks right now.
He's the best defenseman. He's the reigning best defenseman in the National Hockey League, and people still have, and we still have to sit here and talk about him being talked about like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I not only this, I'll give you one other kind of thought about it. He, for $7.85 million for this year and 2 more years, he may be the most valuable player in the NHL per dollar. As far as what he gives you versus what his cap hit is for another 2 seasons, he may be the most valuable, because all those other guys we talked about make 12, 13. Well, Cale makes, I don't know exactly.
Cale's around 9.
Cale's 9.5, I think.
It's still $2.5 million more. So, or $2 million more, excuse me. So for what his cap hit is based on what he produces, look, when you watch Vancouver, the entire game, win or lose, is played on his terms. And that's what makes him and Cale Makar different than everybody else as defensemen. And I think Yossi's had a few years like that, and Hedman's had a few years like that in his career. But like, the whole game revolves around what that guy is doing that night. They control the pace. They control the flow of the puck. They control special teams. So their one human impacts a game almost like an NBA player does, because we know how NBA is so different. And one guy brings it up and shoots a lot. Like, it's almost that level of impact.
Quinn, there's the ones, like, there's so many stats and things we can look at and talk about Quinn Hughes and how good he is and how dominant he is. The one to me was this season. Like, he tied Alex Edler for the franchise leader in assists by a defenseman and obviously passed him. He did it in 538 fewer games. Like, that's just
538.
538 fewer games it took him to pass Alex Edler on the franchise's all-time leader for assists. He's going to pass him in points at some point. Yeah. And then he's going to put up stupid numbers for this franchise. But I just think that we haven't really seen a player like him. There is obviously, Cale Makar and the things that he's done, winning the Norris Trophy, winning the Stanley Cup. I think that, in order for Quinn Hughes to get in that conversation with Cale Makar, for some people, he has to do that. It's a lot of the old schools. Well, he hasn't done it when it mattered most. He hasn't been there. He hasn't done that. Well, Quinn Hughes is doing things at a spectacular level, and this team would be absolutely nowhere without him.
And I'll just address a point. Gotta get with his win in this chat. He doesn't agree on the Hedman part that I made. And I would say, again, like, everybody loves the word like play driver now. That's like this new term that has come from the analytics world that has kind of caught on. And look, there's good meaning to it, but I'm going to push back on you and disagree. Hedman did, quote unquote, drive play. Like, Hedman can control an entire hockey game. The game's always in front of him. Just because he doesn't skate it end to end, his ability to pass the puck and move and read off guys, like, he is one of those defensemen in the last 10 years that the entire game can revolve around him some nights. I'm going to push back on that.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because isn't it like 2 years ago where it was like 35 or 40% of the offense of the Tampa Bay Lightning went through their defensemen?
It did. Yeah. So that's the only thing I do want to push back on. I think we forget just how good Hedman can be offensively when he needs to. But again, it doesn't necessarily just mean offensively. Like, a team never spends time in their defensive zone when their defenseman can bring a guy to you or even 2 guys in and make a perfect pass to the forwards and give the forwards all this space to operate from the top of the circle in your own zone all the way into the offensive zone. Like that is something that eludes the naked eye sometimes because maybe it doesn't end up on the score sheet. But, you look at the teams that win, all their defensemen can make those types of plays. All their decors can make those types of plays. And again, Quinn can do it in so many different ways, which makes him such an elite player. But again, I any pushback on Victor Hedman, I am pushing back on that for sure.
Colby, who are you taking then, Quinn or Cale, to build your team around? It's funny because this is the conversation we're going to have for the next 10 years.
I'm still Cale. I mean, Cale is just...
And I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to tell you where some of the bias comes from on Cale. I have watched Cale play more in the NHL than I have Quinn. Like, I watched Colorado considerably more than I watched Vancouver. And to Johnny, like, I try to catch Vancouver whenever they're on the East Coast. I try to get them because I have sort of a list on the way I make my way through teams to make sure I'm getting views on teams. Because I don't do well when I bounce around. When there's 10 games on and I go from game to game, period to period, I don't do well with that because it's hard for me to, like, I find at the end of it being like, who did I think played well? It's like my brain just doesn't do well with it. So I definitely watch Makar more. And that's probably where my bias comes from. I got to see them both up close and personal at Michigan. In college, Michigan and UMass. But I've just seen Cale more throughout the lifespan of his hockey career live and on TV. So, but I'll tell you what, if you asked me that question 18 months ago, it would be a no-brainer for me. Today, it's like not so much of a no-brainer for me.
I agree with that.
The gap is probably like, you're splitting hairs now at this point.
I covered the Edmonton series against Colorado, and Cale Makar was step for step with Connor McDavid and was on the ice and was kind of morphing into this defenseman instead of just an offensive guy and where they can be dependent on. Quinn Hughes is right there as well. Like I really do. I would take Quinn. I just think that there's a lot there to give. I think that when so much of your team runs through this player, he's so important to the team and the franchise. And also for pennies on a dollar, how much this guy's making is just ridiculous.
But
I just think Cale is also
he's going to make 12 and a half. Like,
or maybe by the time his contract is due, you may be seeing franchise type of players at 14, maybe 15. Which is going to be deserved. Every penny of it is going to be well deserved.
Kaprizov's going to make close to 14 on his next deal next year.
Yeah. Would you rather have Igor Shesterkin in 11.5 or Elias Pettersson in 11.6?
Shesterkin.
I mean, you're probably taking the goalie.
Sorry, I just had to make it about the Rangers. But
is everyone sad in New York about the Empire State Building being suspended for 8 games?
You missed our whole thing already.
I watched a little bit of it. That's why I had to get to it to talk about it more.
Listen, it's always going to be a Rempe hater versus Rempe supporter side.
Yeah.
I don't think those sides will ever see eye to eye. I think that's just how it goes. But,
I wouldn't even consider myself to be a hater on it. I'm just saying what I see. Like,
no, you were right. You were right. And
if this guy can play 12 minutes a night and not get suspended more than he plays, then like, no problem. He's doing his job. But if you can only give us 3 to 5 minutes a night and you're taking a 5-minute penalty and getting suspended and putting your team. Like, I just,
what is it, 90 penalty minutes or something like that in 22 games?
Not signing up for that.
Yeah. I'm a big, I guess not as big as I used to be, but I'm an NBA fan. And Bleacher Report used to have this series called Game of Zones. And they made fun of DeMarcus Cousins all the time because he gets suspended and ejected from every game. And there was a line like where Enes Kanter says to DeMarcus Cousins, "My favorite move is when you fake left, go right, and get ejected." And I feel like people are going to start saying that about Matt Rempe. It's so funny.
Like, who's the best team in the East right now? Like, is it like there's so many teams?
I think it's Jersey.
But they got holes too. Like everyone does, but there's no clear. Like, look at like when Florida was playing that the way they were last year, everyone knew. Like, you knew that team was going places.
Yeah, I mean, like
best team,
like Jersey, Washington, Toronto, Carolina.
I was just gonna say probably Washington. Like, how do you not say Washington with how they've rallied around not having Alexander Ovechkin. And like, I've been on the Caps train all year. And you watch them, like, the size of their forwards, they're playing playoff hockey in December. And that's really good, but also really scary because you don't want to run yourself out of gas, and you don't want to, like, the playoffs, you need to, like, ramp into the playoffs. And, like, they're playing like a playoff team right now. When you watch how big and heavy they are, and you watch how they forecheck, you watch how they get above the puck, like, Washington to me is probably the best team in the East, with Toronto having potential to be the best team in the East. Now Austin Matthews goes down, although it seems like every time he goes down, their record is pretty good. Like, they win without him in the regular season. So, we'll see. I don't know. It's not super clear.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's funny you guys say that. Like, you mentioned peaking and stuff like that. There's so much danger of where teams, like, play so well. So look at the Vancouver Canucks. Like, they so good last season, so early in the season. And then what happened? Like, you hit your peak, and it's getting to the point now where, like, you talk about the NFL, you talk about the NBA. It's who's playing their best hockey in March and April, because that's the team that's probably going to go on the run, right?
Yeah.
It's so hard to sustain good, consistent hockey through a course of an 82-game season, which is why I think the season should be shorter, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah,
Good
no.
luck. Good luck. Good luck.
We were talking
I'm
earlier
not-
about like Florida, Edmonton, which team, if both of them can get back to the Stanley Cup final this year, and I just think Florida has the easier path. Like, I think the West is stacked. I mean, last year, I think it was Matt Duchene who said it last week on Chicklets that their first 2 rounds last year were essentially Western Conference final matchups. They played Vegas and then Colorado. Like, that's tough, man. Like, Florida, if you look at the East right now, outside of those 3-4 teams, like, they should be able to win those series.
So if the playoffs started today, Washington would play Ottawa, and Florida would play Tampa. Jeez. Toronto, Boston, Jersey, Carolina. Like, what? Maybe Washington has an easy series against Ottawa, although if Ullmark is playing 950 hockey, then no.
Yeah.
What series that I just mentioned is easy?
No, yeah.
Like, do you really want to see Tampa in the first round if you're Florida? No. Does Toronto really?
Well, they mopped them last year.
Does Toronto really want to see Boston, even though Boston is not the same? Do you still really want to? No. Jersey, Carolina. I mean, that's a nightmare matchup, even though Jersey's so good. So, I mean, that's what the new format does. It kind of makes it so what you did in the regular season almost doesn't really matter that much.
It doesn't matter.
It's kind of, you're getting a shitty, and when I say shitty, like, you're getting a very difficult first round and second round no matter what.
Yeah. And V-Dog, I see saying that in the chat, Edmonton had LA and no Demko Vancouver, and Edmonton still went to Game 7 against the Vancouver Canucks. And no Boeser in Game 7, yeah.
Well, I got to ask about Boeser, too.
Yep.
We talked about Pettersson and Miller being traded. And sorry if we're keeping you long here, Irf, but
dude,
I know it's like 7 a.m. your time. You're very kind to wake up early and hop on with us. But is Boeser going to be wearing a Canucks uniform after the deadline this year? Like, what's going on with him?
Yeah, that was another question that I had written down for you.
Okay, here, let me talk about, let's get into the Brock Boeser thing. Doesn't look the same since he suffered the concussion. That's one. He's a streaky goal scorer. We know that. He's in a contract year. He's been a 40-goal scorer. So those guys in the National Hockey League, when you do the math, he's probably going to play well. And he's looking for, I think Nick Kyprios reported an 8-year extension with an AAV over $8 million. I don't believe the Canucks want to go there. I don't think they want to go for 8. They're the only team that can offer him 8 years unless they trade him. Do I think that they're going to trade him? No, I think that they want to get something worked out there. I think they really like the relationship and like the combination that they have with him and JT Miller. And then they have Elias Pettersson and Jake DeBrusk. Like, that's kind of the way that they have it penciled in, but it's going to cost you. Like, what are you comfortable with if you're the Vancouver Canucks? You weren't comfortable paying Elias Lindholm, what he wanted.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was a little bit older than Brock Boeser is, but if the Canucks are going to want to keep Boeser, it's going to have to at least be 7.75. Like, that's going to have to be the low point for Brock Boeser. I know that Brock loves it here. He's made no secret about it. He's having a hell of a season. The guy's been through hell. not only professionally playing with the injuries and the blood clots last year and coming back from that, but also his personal life stuff that he's gone through. He's overcame a lot, and he's quietly a leader in that room. Doesn't say a lot. He's not a very vocal guy, but he's a veteran in that room a little bit as well. So I do think that they will try and get something worked out, but it's going to be interesting because I'm of the age where go get paid. You never know what's going to happen in your life. Go and get your money if you can get it. And I think that if the Canucks end up moving him, or if he does end up being a unrestricted free agent, there are teams out there that'll pay him what he wants. And one I really do think is going to be in his hometown of Minnesota.
Wow.
It's a gamble though, because if you lose him for nothing,
I agree.
And obviously
that's why I think they kind of get something done like that. Yeah. That's why I think they're going to get something done.
You really can't trade him at the deadline. Especially if you're in a playoff spot, which we all assume when this thing shakes out, they will be. But it's true. I mean, I just had it up. He's made like 30 something million in his career, 27 years old. Like, this is his big ticket.
This is the one.
This is your, this is your $45 to $60 million contract, depending on if you stay home, stay in Vancouver, or if you hit the open market. I mean, you got to think on the open market with the cap going up, he might get close to 8. Do you think?
I think he gets north of 8.
Okay, so you're maybe 8.5 times 7. I mean, you're talking about $60 million versus I don't
50
know,
versus about 56 to 58 here. So it's just a matter of personal preference, right? Like, if you like it here, you've built your family, your roots are in this city. Like, if the Canucks offer you 8 times 8, that's $64 million. Like, that's a lot of money. That sets you up for life, right? And even 7.75 times 8, that's still a lot of money if you whatever. But it's going to be an interesting one. I think for him, and the Canucks, it's the injuries. It's kind of the slow starts that he's had earlier in his career. But I do know that he loves it here, and I think that they want to keep him.
What's the tax situation like in British Columbia?
Sucks. Just like yours.
I know it's just bad like everywhere in Canada, but is it?
I also think, like, I mean, I know this is an NHL revenue thing, but the dollar's terrible right now too, right? I mean, they get paid in USD, but like, you're getting killed here in Vancouver. Like, there is a BC tax for sure to get players to stay here long term, I think.
Right. Yeah. So you have to up it a little bit. I mean, look, Vancouver is a great city, though. I mean, it is. I mean, honestly, it's one of my top 5 favorite cities to spend time in as a healthy scratch, because, that's mostly what my career looked like at the National Hockey League level. I mean, between sushi at Miku and nights out at the Roxy, you gotta
get back here. People need to stop talking about the Roxy and Miku. Listen, there's more than that in Vancouver.
I will be a Roxy lifer no matter what better and newer and cooler opens up. There's something nostalgic about walking into that bar and the energy of the Roxy. Like, I spent the whole Stanley Cup Finals every night back in 11 in that bar, and the only rule I had from the staff was I better be in the room on time the next morning, telling all the boys the good stories from the night before, since they actually had to get ready to play hockey games. So it's a great city, man. Miku is one of my favorite sushi places. Took Johnny in Toronto,
right? Yeah, that place was
not
sick.
as good as the one in Vancouver, but still really good. Still really good.
Yeah, a lot of good food here. A lot of good scenery. It's good.
Well, Irf, we really appreciate your time this morning. I want to give you a second also to plug your show too, Down to Earth. I know it's bi-weekly, right?
Yeah, bi-weekly-ish, depending on who we get. It's been a passion of mine to do something like that for quite some time. We've had Biz, we've had Kevin Bieksa, Jeff Merrick, obviously, of The Sheet, and then just interviewed Travis Green the other day. So that's going to be an interesting one. We talked about a lot. His coaching style, getting fired, taking time away from the game to be with his family before he got a job in New Jersey. And then obviously now with the Ottawa Senators. I got some pretty good guests lined up for January, so I'm excited about that. And on the daily Faceoff channels. And
the Travis Green episode has dropped already, or
it's dropping. I think we're cutting it. I think it's like sometime over the holidays. I think around the 28th or 29th, something like that.
Okay. All right, good. So keep an eye out for that episode with Travis Green. We certainly will. I'm sure the team will let us know when we can push it out across our show. again, you got up very early this morning to do this. It's nice to know that you're willing to. Unfortunately, that means we're going to be calling on you again. We do have a habit of asking people for 15 minutes and keeping them for an hour. So plan
Happy to do
accordingly. So, hey, man, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on and giving us a little look under the hood out in Vancouver.
All right,
Happy
fellas.
holidays, there.
Yeah, absolutely, fellas. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Enjoy all the good stuff.
Merry Christmas.
too.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Great stuff. Really unpacked a lot with Vancouver, a team that we haven't talked about at all, quite frankly, this year. And I'm excited to listen to the discourse surrounding them all day today. We know every show is going to be talking about this. And I guess we both know where we stand on it, right, Colby? Like, they just got to get through it. Like, it's not going to be easy to trade either of those guys. And this
Who
team
are you siding with? Like, if you have to pick sides, are you siding with Pettersson, or are you siding with the bully? Like, which way are you going with this? Like, is Pettersson being soft or is JT being mean?
I don't know enough to but it sounds like Pettersson's being softer than JT's being meaner, if that makes sense.
So do you think you should
So
block him on Twitter?
JT. I didn't block you because you were bullying. I blocked you because you were being stupid.
Okay.
Like, I said great save by Shesterkin. You were like, oh, good play by Rempe. And I was like, at least be funny. Like,
I don't know.
that would bother me. If you're gonna
I thought you were
be
upset
funny.
about the penalty kill thing.
No. It was when you said
Or the
Rempe
wow
thing.
thing.
You were just commenting on all my tweets.
Well, I mean, listen, you say dumb things, so I give you dumb responses.
I'll stand by him.
Okay, that's fair. You like to lie to your audience. All right, get to Bet365.
Yes, let's talk about Bet365. And while we're in theme of the Vancouver Canucks, we're actually going to bet against them tonight. Macklin Celebrini making his return to home, taking on the Vancouver Canucks tonight. The Sharks are plus 210 on the money line. Vancouver not looking too hot lately. They've lost their last 3 straight games. Obviously, they have the drama circling around them. And if you want to say it's not a distraction, sure, but it clearly might be. They've lost 4 out of 5. San Jose hasn't been that hot lately either. They've lost 4 in a row. But you got to think all those guys in that room are going to play for Macklin Celebrini tonight. Colby, you can talk about the money on the board. You know more about it than I do. I've never been involved in that. But you got to think there's going to be a lot of money on that board tonight.
Well, look, he's on a rookie contract, so I don't think the expectation
for
is
him.
like I remember when Adam Foote, when we played in Columbus, like he put $20,000 on the board that night. He also had been playing in the NHL for 18 or 19 years at that point. So he had clearly made a pretty penny. Now, I don't know. For Macklin, I would guess a couple $1,000 on the board. And I can just imagine he's probably playing for free tonight. He's probably buying a lot of tickets. To just give everybody a little glean into that. Like in the NHL, when you're the road team, you get 0 free tickets. You can buy up to 6. There's a pool available where you can pay and buy up to 6 tickets. Now, they cost anywhere from $125 to $250, depending on what building you're in. Like when you play the Rangers, it's more expensive than when you play Columbus, for example. It's probably $125, and in New York, it's probably closer to $200, $250. So at home, you get 2 free tickets, and then you can purchase an additional 6, or you can use your teammates' tickets that aren't using them. So when you play on the road, like Macklin Celebrini is tonight, he's getting no free tickets. So he's going to have to purchase, my guess, probably purchase a box. That would be my guess. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe dad helps him and goes for the box. So
what does that go for? Like $5,000 probably for a box?
It's so dependent on the building.
On the arena. Yeah.
It's so dependent on the building and what's available. So we'll see. Big slate tonight, a lot of games. We'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow will be our last live show of the week. Wednesday will be the Daily Face-Off Live Morning Cup of Hockey Christmas special. And then Thursday, we will drop our episode with James Van Riemsdyk that we filmed last night, that we recorded last night. We went through his whole career, the ups, the downs, what's kept him in. Obviously, didn't have a job until like training camp was 1 or 2 days before it opened in Columbus. So we got kind of a look into all of those things. Tommy T, what's Macklin making?
$975.
He's making like $1 million this year.
$975,000.
And he'll probably hit a bunch of his bonuses, so he'll make a lot more than that. But again, we'll be back with everybody tomorrow. Normal schedule tomorrow on Christmas Eve. Of course, Johnny and I, well, actually, my wife is not Jewish, so we do the whole Christmas thing over here. So, but we'll still be with you tomorrow morning. So make sure you're with us. Obviously, a lot of people are probably off, so we should have a huge audience tomorrow. The chat was great today. I know we disagreed with some of you at times, but again, your guys' thoughts inform so much of the way that this show runs. I think next week, maybe when we get back to the regular schedule, we should ask everybody in the chat, and even listeners that don't participate in the chat, let us know where you're from. You know, what we start to realize is that a lot of you are from certain places, so we try to tailor the show to our listeners, right? We want to know where you guys are from, what teams you support, and we can
Tommy T's been writing in here for like a year, and I don't know what team he roots for.
Yeah, Tommy T, he bounces around a little bit. He definitely does bounce around a little bit. So, you know, let's make sure you guys I think Johnny's playing in the Jasper Classic. So you can dunk on him there. But yeah, again, we appreciate all you guys. Give us a like on this episode today. Subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube page. And we'll be right back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. We appreciate you rolling with us.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.